Good afternoon, everyone. What we're here to talk about today is directors' responsibilities, and we talk about directors and senior managers, remember, importantly, and I think it has quite significant impetus at the moment with the new sentencing guidelines for breaches in health and safety law that came out last year, and the proposed new sentencing guidelines in the corporate gross negligent manslaughter charges, and we'll talk a bit about that. I don't want to dwell on the dire consequences too much. It demotivates people, but we do need to talk about it. So, as I say, a brief introduction from me about what we're going to be talking about, and here's the legal liabilities. Then a checklist for any questions for leaders, what they should be thinking about, what they should be asking themselves when they're talking about how they're going to formulate and run their business. So, the law, all these things, we've got to start with the law. Whether our intentions are just to comply or to do better, we need to talk about the laws that govern us. And health and safety law states that employers must assess the risk to employees, customers, partners, and any people who could be affected by their activities. Pretty much everyone is who we have to consider. And for those that are interested, it's the Management of Health and Safety Regulations, 1999, Regulation 3, that says a risk assessment must be carried out for all our activities and assess the level of risk to all those parties. We need to arrange for the effective planning, organisation, control, monitoring and review of the preventative and protective measures. So we put in protective measures, guarding, that kind of thing, preventative measures, and more the control measures and the procedures that we put in place. So, risk management, we talk about risk assessment and risk management. It started in the financial sector. When projects were being thought about whether to launch on them, they would carry out a risk assessment on the risks to the business, risk, the financial risk. And it was a good module, and it lent itself perfectly to health and safety. So the same model was used, as I say, in health and safety. Who can be harmed and how? That's all you have to look at. First off, who can be harmed and how, and what are we going to do about it? And it protects the health and safety of employees or members of the public. It could be site personnel, it could be an occupied premises job where we've got client personnel, or members of the public. Very difficult to write any management to them, so we tend to have to do it passively outside of asking members of the public to do certain things, although there are areas where we can do that. But it must come from the top. It can be administrated and passed down, definitely, but the whole impetus and drive of health and safety must be top down. It must come from the top. It's pointless if it's perceived that, they just profit is their only motivation here. So, the law says that companies must have a written health and safety policy. That's in the Health and Safety at Work Act. For 5 or more employees, the thinking is if you've got less than 5 working for you, you're probably in constant contact with them. You're not sat in some lovely marble hall having posh business lunches every day. You'll be in close contact with your workforce, and you'll be able to verbally communicate your health and safety policies and arrangements. And you must have access to competent health and safety advice. Again, that's in the management regulations, and that's what we provide, a little bit of push for us. But you must find out. Any business that you decide to set up, you have a duty to find out what laws govern the industry that you're deciding to work in and what you've got to do to comply. And access to health and safety advice will obviously help you along with that, but it is a requirement in law. And consult the employees on the risks at work. This comes up quite often. Carry out a risk assessment, say, right, that's done, chuck it on a shelf, it's no good to anyone. You must show how it's communicated to the workforce, and as I say, consulting is a two-way street, asking them their opinion. It's now written in law, in the CDM regulations, there must be a formal procedure of consulting with the workforce on a site. In the 2007 regulations, it was consult with your employees. They changed that. It is now the principal contractor's duty, or the contractor, if there's only one contractor on site, to consult, have a formal procedure to consult with the workforce on that site, regardless of who employs them, to the site personnel. So it's important that is carried out, but it has just such huge benefits. Most of the good ideas in productivity and everything else come from the shop floor. These are the people that are out there doing it out at the sharp end and can give really good feedback. The other thing it does is it engages them and involves them in the process. They don't just feel like they're a number of people just coming out and saying, get your hat on. Why? Well, because I said so. It doesn't help. That kind of them and us attitude is something we have to break down. And the consultation with the employees goes a long way to do it. So the law, this is the Corporate Manslaughter Act, Homicide Act 2007. But as I say, they are looking at the sentencing guidelines, particularly for this offence at the moment. And basically, the failure to comply leads to serious consequences. Fairly straightforward. But the maximum penalty is an unlimited fine, and organisations may have to publish details of conviction and fine. The HSE definitely will. The HSE have a page on their website for notices, improvement notices and prohibition notices and prosecutions. They will definitely advertise it. And you may well be asked a question in any PQQ or accreditation document that you may fill in, and you will have to publish the details yourself. Organisations and employees can be liable, and we'll look at this in a minute in more detail, but this is the whole thing about directors and senior managers. You can be liable for a corporate failure personally. Although that corporate failure may have been a violation by others, but you can be responsible for it. Collective and individual responsibility from health and safety. The ultimate person in charge of health and safety is the managing director, the man at the top. There's no getting away from that. And directors cannot avoid a charge of neglect under Section 37, and we'll look at that in a bit more detail in a moment. But those found guilty are liable for fines and also can be disqualified under the Company Directors Disqualification Act 1986. And that power is exercised at the discretion of the court. There's no further evidence required or any further trial or prosecution. They can just disqualify you from acting as a company director for an infinite amount of time or a set amount of time without any further recourse to the courts. Section 37 of the Health and Safety at Work Act talks about the complicity or the connivance or the ignorance of what was going on as a defence, and there is no defence. Of a corporate failing, the individual directors will be responsible. And it's quite clear. So individual directors can also be liable for other related offences. Gross negligence, manslaughter is proved when directors or business owners cause of death by their own grossly negligent behaviour, and punishments include, as we've seen, unlimited fine or maximum life imprisonment. And as I say, with these new guidelines, they are very, very draconian, and they allow for no real discretion. There's a movement within them for judges, but there is nothing but a custodial sentence. Now, if you remember, the first corporate manslaughter against a firm not far from here in Gloucester was a fine. No one went to prison. That won't happen again. There will be a custodial sentence. The sentencing court, as I say, are looking now at these sentencing guidelines for gross negligence manslaughter, and that's what the charge will be. That's why they changed the law in 2007, corporate manslaughter, because it was very difficult to prove manslaughter, causing the death of someone if you weren't physically there when the accident happened. That changed under these regulations. But these are the guidelines. That's what they're looking at now. A momentary lapse by a company that has a very good record and usually has exemplary health and safety procedures and monitoring controls. 1 to 4 years minimum. So there's a year's custodial sentence regardless. Whether it is just a momentary lapse. But someone's lost their life, someone's going to prison. Persistent and negligent conduct, between 6 to 12 years. And this will be, again, this goes back to other health and safety breaches, where in other criminal offences, the law has to prove that you have breached the law. In this, you really have to prove that you haven't. You have to show that you haven't just neglected it. If you've a long and standing utter disregard for the safety of your workers, between 10 to 18 years, should the worker die. So, as I say, very draconian, but we're just taking this seriously in future. There has been, in the last year, some custodial sentences handed down. And it's interesting. This is about the fines since the law changed in February last year. The sentencing guideline changed. And since those sentencing guidelines have changed, in the year 2015 to 14, 46 directors were prosecuted. A couple went to prison, but the majority was fines. But in the previous 5 years, only 24 directors were prosecuted. So you can see the impetus. With these much larger fines now, the old defence of in the public interest, defence of going to court for the fine they're going to get, doesn't add up in the public interest. That defence has pretty much gone out of the window. So we have a look at this. It's quite interesting. £3 million plus fines, none in 2014, none in 2015. 4 once the law changed. And if we look at the other end of the scale coming down, the £250,000, 15 in 2014, none in 15 and 16. So they're looking for the bigger fines now. And interestingly, there's a case in point in 2014, Cornwall Council were fined when a chap went up on a roof and fell through a fragile roof, an asbestos roof, but it was the roof. And they were fined under Section 3 of the Health and Safety at Work Act, or prosecuted under Section 3 of the Health and Safety at Work Act, which is about the people not in their direct employ, but carrying out work for them. So it was they used a builder who was on their approved contractors list, but had no experience in roof work or working at height and fell through. The fine was £6,000 and the costs were £7,000. The guy broke both legs and his pelvis, was seriously laid up for a very long time. In November last year, Thanet Council in Kent were prosecuted for a breach of the control of vibration at work regulations when one of their workers went to his doctor and was diagnosed with hand-on vibration white finger, went back to work and reported it to his bosses at the council to say, I've got this disease that seems to have been caused by the machine. They reported it to the HSE, which are obliged to. It's an industrial disease, who came down and had a look at their procedures, and they had no control measures in place. They'd explained to no worker there was a risk from hand-on vibration. They had no control measures, no health surveillance, nothing whatsoever. But they health surveilled the workers, and 5 more workers were found, so 6 in all had hand-on vibration syndrome. And Thanet Council was fined £250,000 with £8,000 costs. It shows the difference that these new sentencing guidelines have brought in. It was significantly higher, all of the fines. And as I say, the amount of prosecutions is going up all the time as well. So that's all doom and gloom. That's what's going to happen. That's what's going to happen if you don't do something about it. But we're going to avoid that anyway, because we're going to make sure that things go in place. The one thing I will say about this, if you are found to be compliant with all of this, but there is a fatality or a serious accident, and it's proved to be a violation, there will be no prosecution, quite clearly. There's been a couple of cases quite recently where a steel erector was filmed by a member of the public walking the steel. Thought it was a practice you'd never see these days. But the HSE obviously investigated. They had a look at it. All the procedures, everything was in place. All the risk assessments, the guy had been trained properly and everything else. It was a total violation by him. He was prosecuted under Section 7 of the Health and Safety at Work Act. By act or omission, you look after your own health. And the company were vindicated from any responsibility. So it's, because there's always been that worry, isn't it, in Section 2, where they talk about company must, or an employer, the way they put it in the Health and Safety at Work Act, must provide sufficient information, instruction, training, and supervision. You'll always hear about it if you do health and safety courses. And in the past, there have been prosecutions when there's been a violation, a gross violation like that, and they say, well, you couldn't have been providing enough supervision for that to have happened. You may have provided enough information, instruction, training, but the supervision must have been lacking. You should have seen him. Well, it's been seen now. That's a bad way to go. You've got to have a supervisor for every worker. It just gets ridiculous. So they're quite clear now. And the HSE are getting very keen on prosecuting individuals under Section 7 of the Health and Safety at Work Act. So as I say, that's the law, and they're the dire consequences. But, we can avoid it quite easily. It's like all laws. They're the guidance of the many and the prosecution of the. So strong and effective leadership from the top is most important. Worker involvement. I can't stress that enough. It's seen as the new buzzword a bit in health and safety circles, but I'm a great believer in if we can engage the workforce and make them understand why we ask these things to be done and ask their opinion and take what they say on board, I think health and safety can move on. We've plateaued a bit with health and safety. The figures are out at the moment, just recently published, and they show a slight downward trend and deaths and major injuries. But when looked over the last few years, we've plateaued. We need to kickstart health and safety again to get it driven down. 36 people lost their lives in accidents on site. 36 too many. Of course it is. And there will be no comfort to any grieving family when you say, well, look, I'm afraid your husband, your son, brother, your lover, whoever it is, won't be coming home. But he was only one of a very few this year. There's no comfort in that, believe me. So we need to kickstart it again. We can't get complacent. We must drive it forward again. And worker involvement, I believe, is one of the major things that we could do. That's not going to cost huge amounts of money, not going to be a great earth-shattering innovation, but a really good practical step which will drive forward and make everyone who's involved in the project understand that it's their health and safety that we're talking about. And assessment and review. It's important, yeah. We put things in place, just leave it in place. If we don't go back and have a look to see how they're doing. So we need to carry out the assessment in the first place. What are the risks? Who can be harmed and how? And we need to make sure that what we put in place, what we thought was going to work, is actually working. And that is key. There must be constant monitoring. So, essential principles, yes, strong and active leadership from the top, visible and active commitment from the board, not just sending out edicts that we take health and safety so seriously. All the rest of it, zero harm on all the fleeces, proves nothing at all. We need to see more open and visible commitment from the board. And having a nice little phrase or tagline doesn't cut it. Establish effective downward communication systems and management structures. Should begin your policy again. This kind of thing. How does it get? The board come up with something. How does that guy down there in the trench or laying the bricks, how does he know what the decision is? Got to have a good, effective communication stream. An integration of good health and safety management in all business decisions. Health and safety should be one of those considerations when we're looking at profitability, productivity, whatever else is. Health and safety should be up there amongst them. Worker involvement. Probably know by now, it's a bit of a hobby horse of mine. But it is key. I really do believe this is where we can make a big difference. Engage the workforce in the promotion and achievement of safe and healthy conditions. And we talked about that effective downward communication, have an effective upward communication stream. How do they report it back? We've all seen signs, don't walk by, don't let today's near miss become tomorrow's accident. People see the signs up, think, oh, they'd see it every day, stop seeing it. Doesn't it? You need to have a look. Every time you have an accident, look back how many near misses have been reported. And then look at the Heinrich triangle and see how many should have been. And provide high quality training. Involve the work, so make them feel that they are an integral part and invest in that work. So assessment and review, identifying and managing the health and safety risks. So you're obliged by law to do it anyway, but you should be doing. And accessing, in practice, and following competent advice. It's a little bit of a plea from our guys out there who visit the sites. They go around, they see a non-compliance, maybe fairly minor, but they say, look, you could do better here, or should do something about that. It's a breach, and they go back a month later, and things are exactly the same. So, any advice, challenge the advice. If you don't like what you're being told, communication. Why is that? Why should I be doing better than that? Where's the risk? Whatever it is, challenge it, but engage with it. Don't just say, oh yeah, lovely, thanks. File that in the round filing cabinet under the desk. No good to anyone. So listen to the advice, follow it. As I say, challenge it. And monitoring and reporting and reviewing performance is key. We'll have a look at that a little bit more in depth in a minute. But it's key that you're monitoring. Find out all these things you put in place. You can't just sit back and think, that was great, that'll all be working. Find out. Monitor and review the performance on site. You can set KPIs. If that's a way of going, it's a way of measuring the performance. You can look at all sorts of different statistics to review it. But monitoring, going down the site and having a look yourself is a really effective tool. It also adds that high visibility on site. Guys, at least he comes down here and gets down in the muck and bullets with the guy. But as I say, it's not all owners. It shouldn't be a burden. It should be just part of it. If you decided to set up a business, you can't just think this is just getting in the way. It's just, it's no different to any other part of your business that you have to take into consideration. As I say, financial viability, productivity, all the rest of it. It shouldn't be seen as a regulatory burden. It is regulation, but it should never be a burden. The benefits can include reduced costs. If you've planned up front for it, you know what you've got to do. Reduced risks, obviously. That's a given. If you put things in place, obviously the risk is going to be reduced. And lower employee absence through sickness or injury. on either, and a higher morale as well. You get guys who don't want to work on dangerous sites, where it's just there's a mess everywhere. The welfare isn't good. Welfare is a major complaint by the workforce. You'd be surprised. So I've run these committees and consultation councils, and the amount of time it comes out, they're frustrated by never any paper towels, minor things, what you may consider minor things, but enough to make a guy, when in these days where there's plenty of work around for skilled tradesmen, it's enough to make them walk. Saying lower turnover rates, definitely. Accidents are fewer. Obviously, the threat of legal action is lessened, and there will be increased productivity. If guys don't have to make, do, and mend all the time, they've got the proper access equipment, they've got the right tools, they've got the right training. It's just a given that productivity will increase. And these figures are frightening, absolutely frightening. But across, this isn't just the construction industry, this is across all industry. 1 million working days lost every year. Thousands die from occupational diseases. 1 million suffer from work-related illnesses, and several 100,000 are injured every year. And it's frightening. I've just said there's about 36, I think the figure is, of fatalities in the construction industry last year. That counts for 2%. 2% of the construction deaths. 98% of deaths from construction activities are from occupational disease. Thousands dying every year. If we were killing people at that rate on accidents on site, it would be a national scandal. But because it tends to be people who've had to retire or leave work through ill health or age, that are dying from something they were exposed to, or asbestos, emphysema, COPD, all the lung-related diseases, lung cancer, all the occupational asthmas, all kinds of other things. And other things that we were talking about, loss of hearing, hand-arm vibration. They won't end your life, but they will seriously reduce the quality of your life. And, who in their right mind would be complicit in exposing, into sentencing people into the last years being like that? No one would. And these are seriously, we have to take these things. Just look at some of these figures. 1 million working days lost. We're still in the middle of austerity. No good looking at these things, same as it ever was. What can be done? It needs to start inside in the companies. Drive this. You can't change it all, but change your bit and everyone else doing the same. We can make some real inroads on this. This has to change. Mesothelioma is still at a peak. They thought it would peak 5 years ago. It still hasn't peaked. The majority of men of my age who worked in the construction industry and other industries in the days when asbestos was prevalent. But there are still people dying from exposures that have occurred after the ban. And it really does have to stop. And they say prevention's better than cure. Prevention is the only option with mesothelioma. There is no cure. Diagnosis, mesothelioma, prognosis, death. And it has to stop. We're still involved with member companies, and I still get asked advice. Companies going in to do refurbs, no asbestos survey. Oh, we've just pulled down a ceiling and there's a load of asbestos up there. Client's gone mad. Hang on a minute, how did we get here? How did we get here? Did you survey? Oh, yeah, there was one. Well, what did the survey say? Oh, I never read it. And it's that same thing. Asbestos survey? Yeah, tick, right, move on. What's the next thing? Risk assessments? Yeah, I'll print off those blank templates from the BSG website. That'll do. There's all the risk assessments done. Now get on with it. Effective leadership? I don't think so. To say, these are frightening figures and really do need to start moving in the opposite direction. And the courts are starting to do their bit, believe me. So the HSE recommend a 4-point agenda for embedding the essential health and safety principles. It's their plan, what they come up with. And remember, the HSE aren't the bogeyman. They are the police of health and safety, and they have stopped giving, the advice line has stopped. They say go out to the private sector now, but there's still a lot of good advice on their website and guidance on all sorts of industries. We've got the law, we've got the acts, we've got the regulation, we've got industry guidance, ACOPs, approved codes of practice, all still there. And this plan for effective leadership is one of the better ones. So it's plan, do, check, act. So in the planning stage, planning and your policy. Your policy is key. Again, it's not just a generic document. You need to make it bespoke to your business. We're doing risk profiling, carrying out those risk assessments, organisation, Part B of your health and safety policy should be the organisation who's responsible for what and who will do what, and implementing plans. Check, come down, make sure it's working. All these wonderful things we've put in place, are they practicable? Are they working? And act, review the performance and learn from any lessons. Any lessons that are handed out, you need to take the lessons from them. And round again, look back at your policy, planning again. So right the way through, we carry it on. It's a constant procedure. We can never be complacent. And it is the director's duty to set the direction for effective health and safety management. And board members need to establish that a health and safety policy is more than a document. It's an integral part of the organisation's culture. We've already said it's a requirement by law, and members of BSG will know we have a template document on our website available for all members. But it's exactly that. It's a template. It's a one-size-fits-all. You need to take it and edit it and make it bespoke to your business. I've had companies put it in and wonder why it's been rejected, when the first thing it says in it, in brackets, insert company name here, will, and they, I don't know why it's rejected. It's your template. It can't be any good. Oh, really? There's 3 parts to it, like there should be 4 of them. The statement, that's just a page. We're going to carry out a business and do our level best not to kill anyone. When it boils down to it, it's a broad brush. This is what we're going to do. We're going to do our best not to harm the environment, not to harm ourselves, and not to harm anyone else. That's a good point. Second, we start getting a bit more serious. It's the organisation. Who's doing what? Who's responsible for what in the organisation? This is what we're going to do. And the third part is the arrangements. What do we do about working at height? What do we do about lead? What do we do about asbestos? What do we do? This is the policy. Working at height. Every job will be properly planned, the right equipment will be provided. That's the policy statement. When you get down on site and see the actual work on height, that's when it tells you what equipment should be selected. That's when you get down to the nitty-gritty. But the policy is, that's what you will do. And if there's things in there, there's 26 arrangements in Part C of our policy template. I know that because it's A to Z. I had to double up a couple because I'd run out of letters. But there are things in there that may not always remember helping a painting and decorating company make the template bespoke for them. We got down to excavations. I said, what do you do about excavations? We don't go near them. Out. You're not going to have a procedure. We will inspect excavations before everyone goes in. No one ever goes in excavations. Working at height, definitely. So it needs all of these things. It needs to be your document, your policy. This is what we do. Not just, that'll do. What is the company called? Insert name here. It's not a good company name, believe me. So it's got to be an integral. And it needs to be communicated. So board members need to communicate and share the benefits of the health and safety duties throughout the board or senior managers. Remember what we said? And executive board members must develop those policies and respond quickly to any difficulties. And any non-executive board members must ensure that health and safety is properly addressed. They are legal duties. They're not imposed duties, they're legal duties, quite clearly. And the directors need to agree that policy, and the policy needs to set the boards and the individual boards members' role for health and safety. To say that's in section 2, part B, we call it on ours. Who does what? And again, the way it reads is it's a one-size-fits-all. It talks about boards of directors and the safety director. We may be talking about a company that only has one director, the owner of the company. We need to change those titles. It may be his senior managers. You may use contracts managers to carry out some of those roles. But the board obviously must own and understand the key issues of what they're running for and decide the best way to communicate. Communication, I don't want to bang on about it too much, but it is. Still out there, you'll see guys go on one side, be Mrs. Jones's extension, lovely sunny day like we have had up to today, and they'll be that far off of indecent exposure with the shorts rolled up and hanky on their head. The next day, they'll be down on one of your sites and it'll be full PPE. And you say, well, how come, do you feel you're less safe on this site than you were on that site the other day? I said, no, it's just on here, mate. You wouldn't get away with it. You wouldn't get away with how we were dressed yesterday. So that's the only reason you do that, yeah. The only reason I do it is because he makes me. Really? We need to break that down. So, you serious, mate? If you had a look around here, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure I stay in one piece. That's the attitude we need to get into. Not this, God, why have I got, I'm painting a room inside a hotel, why have I got to have high-vis vest on? Will someone please explain it to me? Or in fact, don't bother to explain it to me because your opinion doesn't count a lot with me. These are the kind of attitudes we need to break down. Explain that the reason you've got it on, mate, is when you walk from here across the site to the welfare, it's on. It's in place. You haven't got to stop and think about popping it back on. It's easy enough. It doesn't take any time at all. Communication is key. And promote health and safety. Push the health and safety message all the time, the same as productivity and quality, which we'd be keen on. Appoint a champion, health and safety champion. Anyone that's got ISO 14001, know you have to appoint an environmental champion, a health and safety champion, where one of his duties is to look at everything from a health and safety aspect, as well as a productivity or quality aspect. And remember that policy is a living document. It needs reviewing. Roger and I spoke about reviewing this company's policy the other day. Any legislative changes? No, not since the last time we looked at it. Any serious accidents, incidents that we need to have a look at? No, fine. It doesn't have to take any time at all. If you've got more to do, there's something serious you've got to do more. But make sure that policy is still relevant and pertinent to what you're doing. And health and safety should appear regularly on the agenda of all board meetings. I work for a company, the name I won't mention because you'd all know it, who issued a statement saying health and safety is so important to us, it will be the first point on the agenda of any meeting this company undertakes. Site productivity means whatever it is. Oh, that's good. So off I went to a site progress meeting, sat down, site manager said, right, okay, let's open this meeting. First point on the agenda, health and safety. Any accidents? No? Right. Item 2, just paying lip service to it. It doesn't work. It needs to be effective. On there, yeah, let's discuss this. Right. Is there anything for it? No. Can we do better? Is everything working? Find out. And the chief executive, the managing director, can provide the clearest visibility of leadership, obviously. And as I say, it may be worth your while appointing a health and safety champion. Not in all cases. So we're all different. We've got over 800 member companies and they vary in size, as you can imagine. So it's not going to suit everyone, obviously. Delivery depends on an effective management system to protect people, which is what this is all about, believe me. It's not from keeping you out of prison. It's not about making sure you've got all the right bits of paper in place. It's protecting people, making sure we don't hurt anyone. It's a fairly simple objective, surely. And ensure the risks are dealt with sensibly, responsibly, and proportionately. And proportionality is key. If any of you went to the CDM seminars when the CDM regs changed in 2015, there's now a requirement, as you'll all be aware, for a construction phase plan for every project. Kitchen refurb, the paint and deck of this hotel, construction phase plan. But it's not got to be war and peace. If that's what you're doing, changing Mrs. Jones's kitchen, then a fairly straightforward one will do. In fact, the HSE publish a small template for a construction phase plan. It's 2 pages long. 1 page of that is the guidance on how to fill it in. That's all it takes. But you want to see a bit more on a huge housing development with excavators and God knows what flying around. A hell of a lot more. Proportionality is the name of the game. So take responsibility and ownership of health and safety. Directors must ensure that health and safety arrangements are adequately resourced. Resources, time, money, effort, people. Again, they obtain that competent health and safety advice. Again, it's like anyone else that you may appoint, a designer, contractor. You need to check have the relevant skills, knowledge, training and experience to carry out the task that you've given them. Risk assessments are carried out. They must be carried out. Generic risk assessments don't exist. A risk assessment test template exists that you can then have a look at. For the reactive maintenance boys, the drippy tap guys talk about a point of work risk assessment. Takes a couple of minutes to fill in. Risk assessment. So it's a requirement by law. First thing the HSE will look for in any investigation. Can I see the risk assessment for that task that the injured party was carrying out, please? And employees, make sure they're involved in the decisions that affect their health and safety. Don't just decree down to them. It really doesn't work. They'll have no respect for the message if they've got no respect for the messenger. And it really is key. We need to engage and consult with the workforce. I honestly believe it's the only way forward. And there's health and safety implications when you introduce new processes, new working practices, new personnel. a company recently, a general construction company, that took over a small solar panel installation company because it was seen that it could add and enhance to their core business. But it brought all sorts of challenges for people who weren't aware of how that work was carried out. And we did a lot with them, putting procedures and processes in together, but with communication from the people that they employed from the company that they'd taken over. So new personnel, new working practices, all of those require go back to the planning stage and look at how you're going to involve them and incorporate them in your core business. And we need to dedicate the adequate sources and seek advice. And it's important to design in health and safety when you're implementing change. And that can be anything, modern technology moves on apace, all sorts of things changes. We were talking about whole body vibration yesterday, about a roller. And it came up and said, well, why aren't people using the remote control ones that you can get now? Because A, they're expensive, so far as is reasonably practicable comes into that. And B, they're thin on the ground. Not around much. But I remember in the days when mutes were like that. Cherry picker mutes. Very difficult to hire and very expensive to hire. Now, 10 a penny, everyone's gone. So the technology moves on. So as I say, it's important to design in health and safety when any change of personnel, processes. So how do we communicate health and safety effectively? The directors must reinforce the policy, seen out and about on site on the shop floor, and address any breaches immediately. Deal with it straight away. And always consider health and safety when deciding on senior management appointments. You're looking at someone's CV, ask them what they've done in the past about health and safety, and have procurement standards, not just cheapest. Procurement standards should always be a standard company specification anyway, but we've seen some horrendous consequences from procurement decisions recently, and there'll be more of that to come, I think. So, health and safety arrangements of partners, key suppliers and contractors should be assessed. To say, going back to BSG again, we have a form for a review of your contractor's performance on site. Should be filled in. Your site managers fill it and send it back up. So, no, these guys, they may have been cheap roofers, whatever they were, but they were awful. Turn up without their PPE. I had to supply it if I wanted the roof to go on. No risk assessments. I had to sit down and do them for them. No good. Don't want to use them again. And then you can assess them whether they stay on your approved contractors list or they go. Or you start having a bit of a league table. Preferred contractors or contractors you'll use as a second choice if your preferred aren't available. That kind of thing. You need to be assessing them, not just, they're cheap. It's not always the best practice. Health and Safety Committee. It can work. Got to be very careful of these sort of things. If it's a very large organisation, each small unit may have a representative, so they will know who they need to speak to, and he'll know who to communicate upwards with. But we have to be very careful that it just doesn't become a jolly, everyone sitting around with a cup of tea and a sticky bun, pat themselves on the back and then going home. Because we've all been to meetings like that. There are some who prefer meetings to go like that. But, it doesn't help anyone. Effective meetings is what you want. And the safety committee, it sounds like an old throwback to the 1950s, but in some cases it can be effective, cost-effective, and efficient as well. If there's a stream, if we've got a lot of people involved. But as I say, be very careful about making sure that it works. So providing training to the board comes with a range of benefits. It promotes the understanding of health and safety with the directors. It promotes knowledge and supports worker involvement, improves participation, and it proves commitment as well. And what will we be looking for? Again, going back to our health and safety policy template, if you look at Appendix B, it talks about the recommended training for everyone, from the directors down to the operatives. We talk about there's a day's course on directors' responsibility. It goes in more depth than we have this afternoon. There's IOSH Managing Safely. There's SMSTS. A lot of directors take SMSTS, Site Managers Safety Training Scheme. Not that they're ever going to run a site, but they know then a safe way of running a site. They get a better understanding. So all these things are well worthwhile. People get self-promoted into directorship sometimes and don't have the necessary skills on board. So training from the top down is important. Saying check. Monitoring and reporting are vital. The board need a specific incident-led, if there's been an incident, and routine reports on the performance of the health and safety policy and day-to-day health and safety information is reported in the formal review. Your site managers should be doing that. But I know companies who task every one of their site visitors, contracts managers, surveyors, buyers, QSs, to carry out a health and welfare monitoring report. And again, there's a formal documents. Just a quick snapshot. They're not asking them to be health and safety experts. We just have a look whilst they're on site and report those back. And directors should ensure appropriate ways given to reporting on preventative information, reporting on incident data definitely, and periodic audits, and the risk controls. Make sure those risk controls are in there. So again, going back to our templates, and I keep talking about that, on our risk assessment templates, there are a raft of control measures, but they are suggested control measures. It's up to you to delete or add to them when you're carrying out your risk assessment, not just ticking the whole thing off. Check anything that may impact health and safety, and it must be reported to the board as soon as possible to allow for changes to be put in place. So if there's a major breach or a major incident, you need to react and you need to deal with it immediately. If it's something fairly simple that could wait to the next meeting, it could be dealt with then. You need to put priority on and get those changes in place, not leave it. And monitoring sickness and absence in the work and workplace health. We spoke briefly about this earlier. What is your absenteeism like? Is it due to the fact that you're just not running a site where people want to work? If you've got people constantly going off with bad backs, what's going on? Sprained wrists, that kind of thing. All this information can help implement change in your procedures, and it can help the board benchmark the organisation's performance against others in its sector, which we've spoken about recently. Well, whether we should start putting league tables up so that other member companies can start praising their performance. So include the contribution to health and safety performance in senior managers' appraisals, and make sure the board receives health and safety performance on contractors, which we spoke about earlier, and involve the workers in monitoring. I spoke about the form that some companies use for their site visitors. Get one of the guys to use, go around, see what you think. So that engagement, that involvement all the time, getting the workforce more involved in the health and safety management on site. And a formal board review of health and safety performance is essential at least once a year, and it allows the board to tell whether their health and safety principles have been embedded and demonstrate whether your system is effective in managing the risk and protecting people, which, as I say, is what it's all about. When it boils down to it, that's what it's for. So, act. Does the policy reflect the organisation's current priorities and plans and targets? You need to check that. Has risk management and other health and safety systems been effectively reported? Have any health and safety shortcomings been reported? When was the last time any of you had a near-miss report? Near-miss reporting is a total failure on everyone's part. Something happens, people go, that could have been nasty. It could have been, and as I say, we've all seen the signs, don't walk by, and all these taglines, they don't work. We need to explain to people. Toolbox talks, we can communicate with guys. The reason, guys, we need to know about the near misses is to make sure that that's what it remains, not the prelude to a serious accident. Try and get these things reported. And have actions been decided to address any weaknesses, and have the implementation of those been monitored? And have immediate reviews been considered for major shortcomings? You need to have a cold, hard look at your performance. Be quite critical of your own performance. Yep. Record health and safety in the annual report, same as you would your profitability and everything else. Make those extra shop floor visits. Visit your sites. Let the guys see there that you want to know how things are going out there, not just looking at the bottom line. And celebrate good health and safety performance with awards. We have an award today that Mark would love to talk to you about. I know, because it's where we ask companies to put themselves forward for an award. But celebrate good performance. We have to be very careful that we don't reward what we consider should be the norm. We have to be very careful that it doesn't work the other way, where we say, right, if there's no accidents on this site, everyone gets a posh dinner, because all that does is it discourages accident reporting. It's the thing that came in from the States a few years ago, where they would say there are prizes on offer at the end. There'll be a raffle at the end of the job, and everyone who worked on the job will get one ticket if there are no accidents. You get guys limping and bleeding off the site, making sure now that they're not the one that takes away the raffle prize. So it can work the other way around. But yes, celebrate good health and safety performance. It's always worthwhile. Our awards day is getting more and more kudos, and it's a good day out, but do celebrate good health and safety performance. Larger public and private sector organisations need to have formal procedures for auditing and reporting health and safety performance. The board should ensure that any audit is perceived as a positive management and boardroom tool, not just a beating, which is what we get accused of sometimes, but it's there for you to use. If it's not a particularly shining report, see what the issues are, do something about them, or challenge them. You should have unrestricted access to both external and internal auditors, keeping cost effectiveness in line, independence and objectivity under review. And that's why it's keen. Ways we work, pay your subscriptions, but we stay independent. It's no good us coming down saying everything's rosy when it isn't, and it's not doing anyone any favours to give glowing reports when they're not warranted. So just in conclusion, a little bit about who we are. As you know, we're the Building Safety Group. We were established in 1965 and we're the largest construction safety group operating throughout mainland UK. We're a not-for-profit organisation recognised by the HSE with over 800 member companies located throughout mainland UK, and we carry out 18,000 sites and over 10,000 people attend our training courses. Thank you very much for your time today. I hope you found it informative and useful. If you have any questions about what I've discussed today, please do get in contact with me. The details are on your screen right now. And once again, thank you very much.